The Little Bookroom by Eleanor Farjeon. The Connemara Donkey. One morning, just as usual, Danny O'Toole's mother buttoned on his coat, pulled his green beret over his ears, and saw him as far as the door. The rest of the way to school Danny went by himself. He was 7 years old, and there was only one crossing. "Be careful over the road," said Mrs. O'Toole. "Look both ways, mind." "I will so," promised Danny. "Isn't that the best advice in the breadth of the world?" called Mr. O'Toole from the kitchen, where they all had breakfast. "If you look both ways, you'll be missing nothing so, from a stray cat to a king." "Never mind cats and kings," said Mrs. O'Toole. "You look out for motor cars and bicycles." "I will so," promised Danny, and set out for Larch Grove Road Junior and Infants Mixed. Mrs. O'Toole went back to the kitchen, where Mr. O'Toole was packing his first pipe of the morning. "What a lot of nonsense you tell the child," she smiled. "You stuff him as full of tales as you stuff your pipe with bocce." "What else would you stuff a pipe with or a child?" asked Mr. O'Toole. He was Irish and she was English, and that was the difference. But the English either smile or scold at what they don't exactly understand, and Mr. O'Toole, when he came to live in England, had been careful to pick a smiling one. She was smiling now as she piled up the breakfast cups. Mr. O'Toole got ready to go to work. He worked at the Coronation Theatre round the corner. At home, he wore his shirt sleeves like other men, but at work he wore a touch of splendor on his uniform that set him apart. Last Christmas, Danny had been to see his first pantomime at the Coronation Theatre, and he had lost his heart to the beautiful Dick Whittington and to his wonderful cat, the 7 fairy bells, and the program girl who brought him a vanilla ice after part 1. But when he lay awake at night thinking about it, till he fell asleep and dreamed about it, what he remembered as much as anything was the look of his own little father, opening the doors of motor cars and whistling to taxis, dressed in something he never wore at home. "My father has gold on his coat," he told the children in school. "Ho, very likely," scoffed Albert Briggs, who was not Danny's favorite person at all. "Tell that to the Marines." Albert had heard his uncle say this lately, and he had faith in everything his uncle said, just as Danny had faith in everything his father told him. "Gold on his coat, who?" scoffed Albert. "You tell that to the Marines." "I will so," said Danny stoutly. "My father does have gold on his shoulders and all down his fronts." "Tell us where your father was born, Danny," giggled Maisie Bonington. "My father was born in Connemara," shouted Danny fiercely. This was the question which always ended the talk about Danny's father. The children screamed with laughter at the funny word, ever since Danny first said it. The school poet had made up a little chant about it. Danny's father. Danny's father doesn't live in Connemara. "No, he does not then," shouted Danny, "but he did before that." "Before what?" teased Maisie. "There isn't such a place as Connemara." "There is then." "You made it up." "I did not then." "And my father does have gold on his coat." "Tell that to the Marines," repeated Albert Briggs rudely. "The Marines knows," said Danny, inspired. For all Albert Briggs knew about the Marines was that they were told things, and now Danny had collared them as if they were old friends. The school bell put an end to the talk, which happened after the Christmas holidays when the pantomime was in full swing. But the day when Mr. O'Toole said that about the cats and kings was in the summer, as far away as it could be from Christmas and pantomimes. It was summer holidays coming, and everybody was telling where they were going or would like to go or where they went last year. At the crossing, Danny looked both ways very carefully, and when the road was quite clear, he scuttled across and in another minute was in the playground of Larch Grove Road Infant and Junior mixed. And how funny that his father should have picked that very day to talk of cats, for there was Maisie Bonington with a kitten in her arms. The other children were crowding round her, all trying to touch the kitten, who had a purple bow tied round its pale gray neck. It was mostly very soft whitey gray, with dark markings and scared blue eyes, and when the children fondled it, it pushed its nose under Maisie's armpit and tried to hide itself. "It's a chinchilla kitten," said Maisie proudly. "Let me see," said Danny O'Toole. "Let Danny see," mimicked Albert Briggs. "He ain't never seed a chilla kitten before. They don't have chilla kittens in Connemara." "They has other things," said Danny stoutly. "What has they then?" "I shan't tell you." "You don't know," scoffed Albert Briggs. This was only too true. Danny hedged till he could get information at the source. "I'll tell you tomorrow." "No, you won't." "I will so." "You won't, because," crowed Albert triumphantly, "there ain't no such a place as Connemara." The children shrieked with delight, bringing Miss Daly to the door to see what it was all about. She was the new junior mistress, nice to look at and very popular. She clapped her hands at them. Come along, what's the joke?" "What have you got there, Maisie?" "It's my chinchilla kitten, Mississippi. It was give me last night." "Given me, Maisie." "How sweet. But I don't think you can bring it to school, you know." "Oh, Miss." Miss Daly shook her head. "It's not school age yet." The children giggled. "We'll make it cozy and find it some milk. Aren't you the little sweet?" Miss Daly snuggled the soft gray ball under her chin. "Gracious, look at the time. Get a move on, quick." "S'pose it gets out and is lost, Miss," quavered Maisie. "I promise it won't. You can take it home at dinner time." The thought of the chinchilla kitten permeated the lessons that morning. Maisie Bonington basked in the glory of ownership, fawned on and envied by her schoolfellows. At tea time, Danny asked his father, "What does they have in Connemara, Dad?" "In Connemara is the greenest hills in Ireland, and the blackest bogs, and lakes like looking glass you can see the clouds go by in." "Is there kittens, I mean?" "Just wait till you get there." "When?" "Some day or other." Mr. O'Toole sugared his tea. "Some day you and me'll go to your grandfather's farm where I was born." This was a standard promise, often repeated. Suddenly Danny was curious about the farm he had never seen. "Is there cats and kittens?" "Cats and kittens, is it?" "You couldn't step for kittens." "Of your very own, was they?" "If I'd wanted." "But why me, with a donkey of my very own?" "A donkey." "As white as pear blossom." "A donkey." "And 2 eyes like red rubies." "Terence." From Mrs. O'Toole. Danny said, "Maisie's chilla kittens got blue eyes." She bringed her kitten to school today. Did she so? Mr. O'Toole sugared his tea again, absent-mindedly. Out of the corner of his eye he was watching Danny's quivering lower lip. Albert says there's no chilla kittens in Connemara. Mr. O'Toole stirred his cup of tea. You tell Albert Briggs, with me very best Sunday compliments, you've got a donkey of your own in Connemara. Me? Who else? I meant I giving you him this very minute. I've, breathed Danny, got a donkey. You have so. Mr. O'Toole stood up. It was time to get back to the Coronation, 2 turnings away, very convenient for slipping home to tea. Danny followed him down the street. How big is he, Dad? About so big. Mr. O'Toole's hand sketched the air, just the size for a boy the like of you. Will I see him? Some day or other. Will I ride on his back? Will you not? Does he go quick? As the 4 winds in one. Does there be a saddle? Sky blue plush with silver knobs like stars. You turn back now. Herself won't wish you to be crossing twice. Does there be reins? Scarlet leather called Mr. O'Toole from the middle of the road. Dad, Dad. Mr. O'Toole paused on the far pavement. What's his name, Dad? His name, shouted Mr. O'Toole, is Finnegan O'Flanagan. Go home now, I'm saying. Let's have a look at you, said Mrs. O'Toole, when Danny came dancing in, cheeks flushed, eyes shining. You haven't got a sore throat, have you? She searched him anxiously for signs of fever. Finnegan O'Flanagan, cried Danny. Mrs. O'Toole suspected delirium at once. My donkey's name is Finnegan O'Flanagan, Ma. Get along, she laughed. It's his father's delirium he's got a touch of. Up to bed with you, and don't forget to say your prayers. Danny went to bed and took his donkey with him. His prayers first and last were for Finnegan O'Flanagan. He ran breathless to school next morning, but only managed to clutch Albert Briggs in the passage, leading to their different classrooms. In Connemara is donkeys. Was it? One's mine. Was it? A donkey. I've got one of my own. It's Finnegan. Education parted them, but somehow before the morning break 12 children knew that Danny O'Toole was the owner of a donkey in Connemara. At least he said so. But if there was no such place as Connemara, how could there be a donkey in it? This was put forcibly to Danny in the playground. Danny piled on the circumstantial evidence. He's got a blue saddle. Coo, from the believers. And red reins and silver knobs. Who, from the unbelievers. He's a white donkey. There's no white donkeys, asserted Albert Briggs. There is so. He's got rubies for eyes. His name is Finnegan O'Flanagan. Finnegan O'Flanagan. Derision reached its peak in Albert's voice. Tell that to the Marines. The disbelievers had it by an overwhelming majority. The children scampered about the playground shouting the ridiculous syllables. Finnegan O'Flanagan. A white donkey with ruby eyes. The Marines would never swallow it. His muse took the school poet by the throat. Danny's wonky. So's his donkey, chanted the poet. Danny's wonky, so's his donkey, yelled the school as one child. They plugged this theme song till lessons were resumed. In class, Miss Daly said, smiling, "Handkerchief, Danny." Sitting right under her nose on the front bench, he was trying to wipe his own without being noticed. He used the back of his hand. It isn't easy to suffer a broken heart in full view of teachers' bright blue eyes. Danny pulled out his handkerchief and contrived to smear his own eyes with it while blowing his nose. There is nothing shameful about a good hard nose blow, but eyes are a different matter. Miss Daly smiled again encouragingly and went on with the lesson, wondering what was upsetting Danny O'Toole. For a reason of her own, he was one of her pets, but if you have favorites, it doesn't do to show it, and when children are numbered by the score, one must expect tears now and then. At dinner time, she beckoned Danny to her and tucked a scrap of green in his buttonhole. "Shamrock for luck, Danny." It had come to her by post only that morning. "Thank you, Mississippi, Mississippi." "Yes, Danny." "Did you see a white donkey?" "A white donkey. Where? Isn't there white donkeys, miss?" "Indeed, and there is then." "I don't think I ever actually saw one, Danny." "They're a rare kind of donkey, you know." "What's rare?" asked Danny. "Special," said Miss Daly. Danny strutted out into the playground, fortified with lucky green shamrock. Passing Albert Briggs, he shouted, "White donkeys is special, Miss Daly says. Finnegan O'Flanagan is special. Do you hear?" Next day he had specialties to impart. His 4 hoofs shine like gold. He swings a rose on his tail. Coo! Who? From then on there were tidings every day, gleaned from Danny's father every night. Believers and unbelievers crowded to hear that Finnegan O'Flanagan had run in the races and beaten all the colts by 7 necks. Finnegan O'Flanagan had met a mad bull in the lane and he hawed at him till he turned tail, thus saving the life of the Princess of Galway, for which he got a medal from the mayor. Finnegan O'Flanagan could bray so loud it fright all the banshees out of Connemara. Brave as a lion was Finnegan O'Flanagan, gentle as a dove, and wise as an old barn owl. He would carry a sleeping baby 10 miles and never wake it, but he could smell out a villain among 20 honest men, and if that one mounted Finnegan, he'd find himself on his back in a bog before you could say, "Wished." Coo! Breathed the believers, while the unbelievers hooted hoo. But they were all greedy for more, for a good tale is a good tale, whether it's true or not. If Finnegan O'Flanagan wasn't an accepted fact in Larchgrove Road School, he was at least an accepted legend. The end of term approached. Interest in the Connemara donkey became somewhat submerged in the excitement of the holidays. "Where you going?" "Where you going, Maisie?" "You goin' anywhere, Bert." "Southend." 2 weeks. "Lucky boy," called Miss Daly, scurrying by with her arms full of copybooks. "Where you going, miss?" "Ballynahinch." Miss Daly scurried on, followed by the children's gleeful laughter. Pressed to say where he was going on the day before school broke up, Danny said he wasn't going anywhere. "Then you're going to Connemara," sneered Albert Briggs. "'Cause shall I tell you why? 'Cause Connemara ain't nowhere." "I'll fight you." Danny doubled his small fist. "You shut up," said Maisie surprisingly to Albert. Wasn't she spending the holidays with her Andy at Shoreham, and wasn't Bert going to Southend for 2 whole weeks? Well, then, she chose Danny to go with as the children clattered through the gates and asked him consolingly, "What's Finnegan been up to?" Danny took the bait. One time Dad was lost and it was as black as pitch, and so his lantern blowed out and there was bogs, and so Finnegan's eyes shined red like traffic lights all the way 100 miles. Dad was ever so hungry, and he would have starved to death if Finnegan. He could have shot some rabbits, shouted Albert in the rear. He could not then. He didn't have a gun. Why didn't he? He was only as little as me. When your dad was lost? Yes, and Finnegan, how old's your dad? Demanded Albert Briggs. Danny dashed at it. 52. Who? Finnegan's dead then. Danny turned and stared at him. Albert grinned round the group of homegoing children. Donkeys don't live 20 years. Finnegan's a debtor. Danny ain't never had no donkey. He's wonky. So's his donkey, chanted the poet. Danny's wonky, so's his donkey, yelled the children. It wasn't true. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. His father would know. Danny doubled his fists again, wavered, then rushed out of earshot, rushed home with streaming eyes. At the crossing, he forgot to look both ways. It was Maisie who brought word to school next morning why Danny was absent on the last day of the term. That evening, Miss Daly appeared on Mrs. O'Toole's doorstep. "I've come to ask after Danny, Mrs. O'Toole. We're all so dreadfully sorry." "Is he?" "Oh, miss, he's very poorly." "Would you like to see him?" But Danny didn't know who Miss Daly was. He seemed to be speaking to somebody who wasn't there, somebody he called Finnegan. Suddenly he stared at Miss Daly and doubled his fists. "Finnegan's not a debtor." "I'll fight you," he cried. "I'd better go," whispered Miss Daly. "Don't come down. I'll find my way out." She went downstairs feeling very much upset. Mr. O'Toole was hanging about the passage. He looked at her vaguely. "Is it the nurse you are?" Miss Daly recognized her native accent, and her heart went out instantly to Danny's father, as it had gone out instantly to his son. "I'm Danny's schoolmistress, Kitty Daly," she said. "Mr. O'Toole. Who's Finnegan?" Mr. O'Toole told her. He told her everything, from the rose on Finnegan's tail to his non-existence. "It's an old fool I am to be stuffin' the child's brain with legends," he mourned, "but such store he set by that lily white as I went on and on with it, like a man follows a wandering light in the dark." Then Mr. O'Toole cried, and Miss Daly cried too. "I'll write," she said. "I'll be going home tomorrow, but I'll write. I'll want to know." Miss Daly did write, but not as soon as she meant to. When you return home after quite a long time, there's so much to catch you up from moment to moment, and then that business of crossing the Irish Channel is more than just putting a space between you and England. It's putting one life in place of another. To make things worse, it happened that a young naval officer called Frank arrived in her village the day after she did. He had been on the same ship as her brother, so once she had met him, and now, by a funny chance, he had turned up to spend a holiday where she was spending hers. They spent the first week saying how curious it was. Frank's hobby was taking snapshots, and he took them by the reel of everything she showed him about her home. The only thing he didn't take was Miss Daly. He wanted to, but something got into her, and the more he urged, the more she wouldn't let him. It wasn't till the 7th day, when they were leaning over a gate, feeding thistles to Patty the peat cutter's old gray donkey, that Miss Daly exclaimed, "Oh dear." "What's the matter?" asked Frank, rather anxiously. "I never wrote." "To whom?" "To Danny, the darlint." "Who's Danny?" asked Frank, rather fiercely. "He's my pet pupil, and he had an accident." "I'll write this very day." 3 days later, Frank found Miss Daly crying her eyes out over a letter from England. "Kitty, Kitty dear, what is it?" "Danny," she choked. "He isn't." "No, but he's very bad indeed. He's in hospital, and he keeps crying and crying for Finnegan." Finnegan. Miss Daly told Frank everything about Finnegan, everything that Mr. O'Toole had told her, and how Danny's whole heart was set upon his Connemara donkey, white as snow, with ruby eyes and gold hoofs and a rose on his tail. His very own donkey whom he had never seen. "And of course," sobbed Miss Daly, "there's no such donkey at all, and never was, and there's Danny crying out that Finnegan's died, and nothing his father tells him makes any difference. Wouldn't I be giving him a white donkey the like of Finnegan if I had one?" Miss Daly felt her hand pressed gently. "Indeed, it's good of you to feel so for poor Danny," she sighed, "but it's only the sight of his donkey will do him any good." "Why not?" said Frank, whose only thought was to stop the tears flowing from Miss Daly's beautiful blue eyes. The tears did stop flowing, and the blue eyes looked with great surprise into his brown ones. "What do you mean by that?" asked Miss Daly. "You'll see what I mean," said Frank, "if you'll be in Mike's paddock at 12 o'clock tomorrow, and Kitty, well then, pray for a sunny day with all your might." Miss Daly must have spent the whole night praying, for the day was one of the sunniest ever seen. She couldn't wait till noon to get to the peat cutter's paddock, but Frank was ready for her. And so was Patty, but no. This was never Patty? Mike had surely got himself a brand new donkey, gleaming like snow on the top of a sunshiny mountain. As she came near, Frank was just finishing tying a big pink cabbage rose to the tail of this white wonder with a ribbon the color of Kitty Daly's eyes. "Allow me to introduce you," said Frank gravely, "to Finnegan O'Flanagan. Don't come too near. I'm not sure if he's quite dry yet. What do you think of him?" "Oh, he's beautiful," whispered Miss Daly. "Where's your camera now?" She had jumped to it without being told. "You must photograph him against Mike's old black shed. He'll show up like an angel so." "I hope he'll stand still," said Frank. "He's tried to kick me twice, and he's kicked over the whitewash can already." "He'll not kick me," said Miss Daly. "We're old friends, aren't we, Patty boy?" "Splendid," said Frank. "Then if you'll just stand by him and keep him still, get away with you. I'll not be photographed." "Not even to please poor little Danny?" "It's not me he's crying after." "No," said Frank, "but if you're in the picture he'll know that Finnegan is as alive as you are." Miss Daly wavered. Frank had an inspiration. "I tell you what, lift up the donkey's tail and be smelling the rose." Miss Daly gave in. With a face full of laughter, she lifted Finnegan's tail daintily and sniffed the cabbage rose. The camera clicked. "Right," cried Frank. "Just one more to make sure." The camera clicked again. "We'll have an enlargement made of the best of them and send it by air." "Oh," cried Kitty Daly, "I could hug you." "Why not?" said Frank. But it was 2 enlargements he ordered of the Connemara donkey with a rose on its tail. When the autumn term started at Larchgrove Road Junior and Infants Mixed, Danny O'Toole was not there. But halfway through the term he was well enough to come. Everybody knew he was coming, and Miss Daly, who had visited him already at home, knew what he was bringing to school with him. She hovered in the background while he displayed the flat brown paper parcel he carried so carefully under his small armpit. "Was it?" demanded Albert Briggs at sight. "It's my donkey," said Danny. "It's Finnegan O'Flanagan." The children crowded round to see as he took off the outer wrapping and opened the large stiff envelope, which contained the photograph of a donkey as white as pear blossom, as snow on the mountain tops, or as whitewash. The children gasped with wonder. The black shed threw up the angelic donkey into dazzling relief, but as well as that his eyes glowed as red and his hoofs as gold as luminous paint could make them. And if anyone had still been inclined to doubt, there at Finnegan's rump stood their own junior mistress, smelling the rose on Finnegan's tail with a smile as bright as the mischievous sunshine on the paddock grass. "Coo!" gasped believers and unbelievers in one breath. "It's Miss Daly," said Maisie Bonington. She called eagerly to the junior mistress, Miss. "That's you in the picture." "To be sure it's me." "And is that actually Finnegan?" "Who else would it be? There was never a donkey the like of Finnegan O'Flanagan." And she started to tell them wonders that outstripped the stories of Mr. O'Toole, yet they carried a conviction his had not. For his were tales of 50 years ago, but here was Miss Daly telling of a donkey she had seen with her own eyes only last month. Among the group of excited listeners, Albert Briggs chewed the bitter cud of thought. When Miss Daly paused for breath, he broke in. "Miss, what is it, Bert?" "Danny said his donkey was in Connemara." "It is so," declared Danny. "But, miss, you said you was going to Ballinhinch." "Well then, Goofy, Ballinhinch is just another name for Connemara," laughed Miss Daly. "Is there really such a place as Connemara, miss?" asked Maisie. "Well, I should think there is." "Wasn't I born there?" Then Albert knew he had staked all and lost, and so did the rest of the infants and juniors of Larchgrove Road School. The fickle poet, seeing how the land lay, began to chant, "Bert's wonky, Bert's a donkey," and the school took up the chant. Danny's triumph did not end even there. It had been noticed that Miss Daly came back from Ireland with a ring on her left hand that hadn't been there during the summer term, and one day the exciting news ran round that Miss Daly had been called for by a naval officer, a lieutenant in the Marines. He came down presently from the staff room, where he had been talking to the mistresses, and now he wanted to talk to the children, as many of them as could get near him and weren't too shy to touch him. And the things he told them about Finnegan O'Flanagan, things which outstripped all Mr. O'Toole's and Miss Daly's tales put together. The Marines, it appeared, could tell even more things than they were told. But one thing he told made them all rather sad. It seemed that their junior mistress wouldn't be coming back to teach them next term. "She's going to teach me instead," groaned the Marine. "Won't it be awful to be a class of one? I shan't ever be able to escape her eye." That made the children laugh. Maisie Bonington reassured him. "She's ever so nice, sir. She's scarcely never cross." "I'm relieved to hear it," said the Marine lieutenant. Then he told them something that brightened them up again. As a Christmas treat, he was going to take them to the pantomime at the Coronation Theater one Saturday in January, when he and Miss Daly would collect them all in a bunch. The Marine was as good as his word, and Aladdin at the coronation was past all expectation. But among the golden wonders of Aladdin's cave, none stuck more vividly in Albert Briggs's mind than the glitter on the coat of an important little man who helped to usher the party of children to their seats, a little man who, catching sight of Danny, winked solemnly, while Danny whispered in passing, "Hello, Dad." A little man who was Danny O'Toole's father and who wore gold on his fronts.